I just joined the offer on the ES, and it's a very slow, balanced day, but we have this fairly pronounced LVN at this area that we've been back to, put in a slight increase in volume. And what I'm looking to do is kind of take out this weakness, this grindy move down to the left. And my target would be really up into this high tick area, if we can get there at the 44.59 area or so, or this high tick here, a little lower at 44.54, and we hadn't really taken out anything, but expectation was that this slight increase in volume here, we would push above that, but I want to get in before we break this liquidity here, trapping these last late sellers. Sellers here, sellers here, sellers here. And we really could move much higher into, we don't really have any untested supply until the 64 area, but I want to see how we respond because we do have some selling that came in here and a little bit here, so we'll just see how this responds. But it's a very slow, balanced profile in the overnight session here, and then we're in this more pronounced LVN that we rejected. That's how I see this trade anyway. So gold, we can say a quick little blurb about that as well. Really just completely balanced in this chop in the overnight session, so nothing really to do here until things change. I'll be looking to take off my risk on a push into and above this last seller here. We do have a little bit of selling coming in, small increase in volume now. Stop is going to be down still. Risk, we'll have risk on down into the 51.25 for 2 points of risk for 6 points at least of reward on the trade here on upside. So that's a 3R basically if we can hold and push higher. We do have, like I mentioned, a little bit of limit selling coming in here, but now we are above this short-term range. So as long as we hold here, I'm gonna continue to see if we can push higher. Not really any reason to do anything on this trade yet. This small pullback is to be expected, and now we're pushing down below that. So this may be the last push down before the move up, or we're going to take out this low and move lower. So that's kind of can go either way now, but pretty significant increase in volume here. So could be the last push before the move down, but not really what I like to see on this trade now. Likely to get taken out. If that happens though, I will take the stop and reassess. This is one of the bigger volume bars that we've seen in the last hour or so now. So do have some buying on the limit lower at 44.50, which is also an area I wouldn't be surprised if we hit. I just took that off at 41.50 for a 2-point loss. So if the context is for higher prices here, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we came down and spiked this 44.50 and take this liquidity out before any kind of a reversal. So not sure if it's going to line up for a long side trade for me, but that's what I'll be watching for. Downside too is to take out this low here and then into this kind of this demand push here. So push down all the way into the 49 area wouldn't be a surprise at all if and when we see any kind of reversal. Took a long trade on gold before the break of this liquidity, but pretty significant increase in volume coming in, and I just entered on the spike down, and so I'm a little bit on the wrong side of this trade now, feeling uncomfortable, but I think that might be the last spike before a potential move up here. So I'm going to try to be patient and hold on to this trade, but very close to getting taken out. But again, this is a good risk-reward trade here, because limit buyers came in here, pretty significant heavy volume on this at the 430, and then we haven't taken out. This is definitely not a very weak low for the overnight session. So now I really need this to go, but that last spike down convinced me that that could potentially be the shakeout before a move up, and we have that grindy top of the range as well, so price is kind of stuck here right at my entry now, so not feeling like it's a very good entry, and now I think I'm going to take this off for a loss, because I was the trap trader on this one as well. So the low side of this range likely to get taken out before further move down, but again, this is not a weak low area. But again, this is just kind of pretty grindy, slow trade. Now it's right at the 6:30 time frame, so would expect some volume to come in here now. Long gold again came down and took out this liquidity, also took out this weak area that I was talking about. All of this has been taken out now on increased volume. Potential for this last seller to be trapped. Have some kind of increased volume coming in at the top side here, so this area needs to hold right around my entry to see if we do have the short side trade trapped. But taking out that liquidity and the imbalance up, I like the chances that this can take out the top side. There's a lot of room, nice upside potential on this trade. My entry is 23.80. That's a nice push right there. See if we can push out these shorts. As soon as we push up above that LVN at the 25.20 area, I'll be taking off my risk. But that's a nice push there. So if we came back to my entry at this point, I really wouldn't want to have risk on anyway. I don't want to see another test. But this is the last seller that I was talking about. Pretty minor seller. But then this is also the kind of the low side. We didn't quite get down all the way to this LVN, but that's okay. I like where I'm at on this trade now. All this is weak. The top side of this range here, real weak. This is just kind of grindy, nothing significant. And I just got taken out, break even. Would like to comment on this last gold trade. When I was taken out here, I wasn't really wrong on that trade. It just pulled back to the volume, but I was trying to avoid a full stop, trying not to lose, which is not really a good proposition. And then now we've come up and taken out the this short-term range from this low, basically from here to here. So that would have been a more legitimate de-risk in this area now. So now I'm kind of stuck without a long side trade here, without buying the top of the range, which I definitely don't want to do. But so far it looks like my idea, context, and read was correct, but just managed it poorly, and then a last drop is the one that took me out on my trade. So I'm short 4150 or long 4150 ES. In this area of buying, came back down into fresh liquidity, really big volume coming in here with an inability to go lower. This was kind of a clue here. This volume needs to hold, otherwise I'm going to be the stuck trader. Had some selling coming in here, but I don't really want to be long if this doesn't hold, which it looks like it's not going to. So I think that little spike up was a shakeout, possibly to take out the low, and it looks like that's what's going to happen, and I'm going to take a loss on this guy, a 3-point loss. That's a loss for me, full loss. Long again, 40-50, top side of the range, not a very good entry at all. Looks like I might be dropped a trader again and with a bad position. But let's see. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to take another full loss. Sucked in. This volume has to hold, and it did not for me. Long again, 40-75 this time. We broke above this high, put in some volume. Expectation is to take out this range up into this volume here. So I don't really want to take a full stop all the way down below the lows, so that's way too much of a stop. So if this area doesn't hold where my entry is now, I have a reduced stop now below this last low. And hopefully we can just get a pop higher. But it's slow and it's a weak low for sure. This is not a strong low at all, but it seems there's a lot of buying in here. So we'll see if we can get a pop. This last supply here, we have to get through this. This is where we could potentially see more selling coming in, but finally seems like I'm on the right side, but I have 6 points of losses to make up, so that's going to be significant to overcome now at this point. We'll see how it plays out. Again, this is an area where we could see selling coming in, where we saw this previous supply. We do also now potentially have quite a few shorts trapped in this area, which is where I want to be before a break and before this liquidity is taken out. I actually did get in after the break of that, but it still made sense that these shorts were trapped. So if this area held, I didn't have much downside risk. Potentially now these shorts are trapped as well. And now if we can flush this here, we have the potential for a nice push. I'm not going to get greedy. No point in trading it back through any of this either. I'll be happy to take that because we really could see where this supply drop came in, a reaction here at the very least. So have some increased volume now coming in where I wouldn't really expect a strong reaction from sellers to come in, but just got to get a little bit lucky and get the last final push up. And that's looking pretty good. Some volume coming in now. It's just, I gotta lock in something here. Definitely volume coming in now. And that's target hit on that one. Quick comment on my trade, my last trade at 838. I was definitely a little late on this, Kelly, and talked about this being actually long 836 a little earlier with this structure, expectation to hold, and then before these highs were taken. And I totally agree that makes sense because this would be a good de-risk area and expecting it to hold from above rather than getting in really at the top of the range and getting stuck in this, because if this doesn't hold, the top of the range doesn't hold, this could be, with this volume coming in, this could easily just come back down, hold top of range, and then take out this weak low. I just thought it made sense because all of this accumulation buying in here, there's a lot of high volume buying, and so it was a little bit of a field trade, and also trying not to miss after taking the losses because that happens to me so often. So after this second imbalance, I thought it was worth it to try to capture that upside, and this time thankfully it worked out. I'm short gold 35.30, and the expectation for this trade is to come down into this LVN down here, into this untested demand, but we had a pretty significant move up, imbalance higher, and then we had these moves lower, this imbalance lower, and now this area needs to hold, and this is definitely weak to the downside, and expectation to come back down into this LVN around the 3150. Now it's real close right here on whether or not this is going to hold and push down, but we have definitely some potential trapped longs now in this area, coming back into where previous supply was, and looks like we may not hold this last buyer. Somebody's gonna have to be pushed out here. And it looks like I'm not on the right side of this trade. I'm gonna have to kill this. It's not gonna hold. Didn't really have many trapped longs here yet, so I was probably a little early on this idea, or just completely wrong. Increased volume on the buy side too, so I would say I was definitely wrong on this. This increase in volume was significant, and I still entered on the pullback on this push down. Now I just have to get really totally lucky, which is never a good trade strategy. That was quite a deep pullback. It's holding so far, but I don't feel good about it. Pulling back to the volume now, so it's gonna have to just basically push through, and that'll kind of lean on my context read, but this area is where the buying volume came in now, so gotta get a little lucky. I should probably kill this trade right now, being that it's pulling back to that volume and holding. This is our last buyer that I'm still below, so we need to see some kind of response showing that these buyers are no longer in control, but this is the moment of truth on this trade. I need to have this push through and trap this last long, and then I'll feel a little bit better about the trade. If we can get through that, then all of this is fairly weak. But I'm right at the area that I would expect these buyers potentially to still be there, so that's not a real great place for an entry. But I'm going to hold it here to see what happens. Not really any increase in volume, but now it's just sitting at my entry, slightly above now. Good news as far as if buyers were in control, I wouldn't expect price to be back here, and it would have went and broke that high. But it's also not real volatile, not real fast moving trade at this point, but I just don't like where my entry location is at all. I just now have to get lucky and hope that we flush this low and push these buyers out. But there are a lot of potentially trapped buyers here if we can push down. But we're seeing somewhat of a small buying response here now again. Just the worst possible entry location, I would say, at the bottom of that range to short the bottom of the range, but we're not seeing any crazy buy volume coming in. This is really the last chance for this trade, I feel. It's not a good trade in general, but selling the low side of that range there. And now in an area that I would expect to hold if the buyers were in control, so that's not a real great position to be in, but a little bit of a push now. So these are the potential buyers. Here's our last buyer here. Buyers here, buyers here, buyers here, buyers here. So if we can push down below, I expect this weak low to be taken and to push down into fresh demand to take my trade off. The safe exit really would be probably around the 3130, 3150 area. So that's what I'll be shooting for. We do have some increased volume coming in here now. Potentially stops, but it's holding down, which is a good sign in my opinion. Not really any kind of price movement for the buyers here. So price is being held down, the limit is being reloaded. So that's a good sign for the shorts. So now we just really need to push here and not get spiked out on any kind of a retrace, and be patient and let the trade idea play out. I have risk off now, and we just need to flush these lows, and that's where I would expect the liquidity to come back in. Pretty significant increase in volume here now. That's not a very good response. This is where I would expect the sellers to hold if they were in control, but I'm going to get taken out likely. Needs to hold here. Our last significant buyer here is now underwater, and none of this liquidity has been taken out, so it's another break even. Unfortunate, frustrating part about this trade is I was up 19 ticks on the previous trade, 17 ticks on this trade, and I locked in nothing. So net still down 9 ticks. I'm along the ES 5925 here. Continued to have increased volume and buying coming in here. I was also looking at the short if we could potentially hold this area below, but my expectation now is that the short-term selling is trapped here now, and we really have a nice potential to get all the way up into this untested area. Also to take out the high of day, but I'm not going to hold for that. I'm going to just hold for a break of this range here and into this LVN, which is at the very top of the range, 6650 around there. So this is a nice, very nice response. Bought at the top of this range with the expectation that we would push this out, so a little risky, and a fairly significant stop at 54.75, but it's working out nicely here. So I'm obviously going to take off my risk now. So I went +1, and short of having any kind of crazy selling volume coming back in here, I mean this is not the strongest high here, and we could definitely come back up in 66.50. This is somewhat untested into the low side of this range at 70.25, but we have to see how this handles this area. Don't want to take it off too early either, because an expectation to come back down to this selling area where these sellers are trapped. So we'll see what happens. This area is holding so far, but I just was taken out on a push back down. We had increased volume on this bar here, so that's this imbalance that came from this supply. So unfortunately, that was a pretty significant equity trade that I had there. I had 5 points of equity on that one that I did not take off and didn't lock in any profit, unfortunately. Trying to shorten gold one more time. We had a new high day put in. Little buying here, some trap buyers here, and just so much weakness to the downside I see as potential. So a little risky here being at the top side, but I think it has a real nice flush potential for the weakness is crazy all the way down here. We could see all the way back to the 3150 if we can get a push down. Just took a -5 on that trade. Spike up, last spike to get me, and then it just crushed. That's sickness right there. Right exactly where the stops were. Wow, that's crazy. So this trade took me out when I reduced risk above here by 1 tick was the high, and this flush is what I was talking about. Exactly, context read, exactly correct. 55 tick target hit. Came all the way down to the 29.90 to the 30 area. So that's pretty unfortunate on that one.